Good afternoon from the Colony 5-Star Sports Complex here in the Colony, Texas, as the Dallas Roughnecks take on the Atlanta Hustle at home. I'm Amy Fitzgerald alongside Greg Gibson with Paige Snorbach on the sidelines. So, Greg, throughout this regular season, Dallas has been able to remain at the top of the AUDL power rankings. What do you think has been their key to success?
Well, like any elite team, they've relied on strength in numbers. The names, the faces have changed throughout these last few months, but the competitive fire really hasn't changed, and you don't expect that to. That competitive fire is from top to bottom. The legs, the agility, just that fire all around is going to be there, and you don't expect that to change today.
And looking at the AUDL South Division on the whole, with Dallas's win against Jacksonville, they did clinch that first-place spot, guaranteed playoff berth, and first-round bye. But the third and final playoff spot is kind of up in the air. Atlanta being one of the teams kind of looking to gain that spot. What does Atlanta need to do today to solidify their position for the playoffs?
Well, not 24 hours ago, Atlanta came up with a very crucial victory, getting some bit of revenge over Austin with a 2-point victory in overtime. And now this game is going to be just as crucial. You're going to have to take a look at the it's going to be very crucial that they have a hot start here today. They have to overcome the heat and the short turnaround and make sure they don't fall into a quick hole against this Roughneck team.
And Atlanta brought 21 players to their game. Typically, road teams bring 18 players just due to travel costs. But the 21 signifies they're serious about playing, especially with 5 Roughnecks players out in London on Team USA. So we have Kurt Gibson, Bo Kittredge, Cassidy Rasmussen, Dylan Freechild, and Jimmy Mickle, all in London. How do you think that will be a factor, having those Team USA players out?
I think it's a matter of the pace from the start. They need to really attack both offensively and defensively from the start and really hope to really run them a little ragged. Even though they're the ones coming on the short turnaround, they need to seize the opportunity with the star power being a little less dimmed and hope to really go for it from the start.
And we have an exciting game ahead of us here in the warm and hot Texas sun. We will be back after the break with the Dallas Roughnecks.
Early recognition is critical. Teaches middle school PE classes about ultimate frisbee and cancer symptom awareness.
We're a registered nonprofit that advocates for an active, healthy lifestyle, body awareness, and speaking up if something is wrong.
Skills that, when it comes to cancer, can help save a life. Ultimate is a fast-paced team sport that's self-refereed, non-contact, and co-ed.
Spirit of the game is the foundation of Ultimate. That means we communicate respectfully, we're fair-minded, and we enjoy the game.
Ultimate is accessible to everyone. All you need is a frisbee and some friends. Our team of coaches is made up of experienced and passionate leaders from the Ultimate community.
We teach kids that playing fair is more important than winning.
We can come to your middle school and run your PE classes for the day. And if we're not in your area yet, we'll send you our clinic in a box, where we give you the resources to run your own.
Ultimate Frisbee is one of the fastest growing sports in the world.
Teachers and parents love Ultimate Frisbee.
We are Eric!
And we want to work with you and your school.
Hi, welcome back to 5-Star Colony Complex. We are here on this beautiful sunny day in Dallas. It is hot, it is humid, and this is going to be the first test for the Roughnecks under this Dallas heat, as it is an afternoon game. The team is looking great on this Father's Day. There's a lot of fathers in the crowd, and we actually have Coach Patrick Eberly, who is a father of 2, and brand new father, Brandon Malachek. We will see how they get to perform in front of their families today. Back to you, Emmy and Greg.
Thanks, Paige. Brandon Malachek being called out onto the field right now. A new father just last week. He and his wife, Julie, had a beautiful little girl. We're so excited for him. Paige, there's no joke about the heat. It's at 91 degrees, but certainly feels a lot warmer than 91. Greg, how do you think the players really play through that heat exhaustion and some of those factors?
Really, I think once they get going and they have their mind on the task at hand, they're going to forget all about that heat. I think they want to get moving more than anything. I think they really want to get through these introductions as quick as possible and just get their legs moving. I was on the sideline and heard Matt Bennett actually probably half-jokingly say, "This is going to be the longest game of my life." And it's probably going to – we're in for a long one indeed. So they're going to want to keep cool on those sidelines and keep active on the sidelines and keep invested in the game so they're not thinking about this heat at all.
Right, and even Atlanta was remarking – the temperature is higher typically here in Texas, but the humidity usually is a little bit more in Atlanta. And so it's kind of part of living in the South, I would have to say.
The southern heat distributes southern justice to all, for sure. No one is exempt, so they're all used to it at some extent.
Chris Larberg's name just called. He went down with a shoulder injury a few weeks back on the road, but the doctor cleared him to play this week, so he is back and excited. What kind of effect do you think the defense really plays on the game, Greg?
Well, especially when the star power is a little dimmed, as I mentioned earlier, the heat, the quick turnaround for Atlanta, and the wind's picking up a bit here. The defensive intensity is what's going to really establish who's going to have the upper hand early and throughout the game. So I'm looking at defensive players and defensive firepower from players such as Matt Jackson covering pulls, or Stanley Peterson being a one-man Air Force, and Dan Emmons, Danimal, he was absent in the last home game, so his defensive fire and his energy just in general was definitely missed.
That's right. Even in that Charlotte Express games, they tried to throw a lot of deep shots with Stanley Peterson and Dan Emmons being out. Well, they're both here today, so that takes away a lot of the free reign over the deep game that some teams might try and do.
Dallas is certainly not going to mind this gustiness because just a small margin of error on any throw, and they're going to eat it up all day in the air. Just put it in their air, and they're going to take it.
Absolutely. Well, we invite you to join the conversation with us on Twitter, at @DRoughnecks Live. Tweet at us, ask us your questions. We'll try and answer those in the broadcast. We also have our various social channels. If you search Facebook for the Dallas Roughnecks, then you will find us there, and we have lots of really neat videos and photos and some live events. But check us out on social media at what you see there on the screen. So Reed Bacon currently being announced. Reed Bacon made headlines. Actually, Greg, you covered his announcement for the women's grant.
Yes.
They just announced the recipient, a high school student in Dallas named Callie Zane. She is playing with Texas Tango. But, I mean, talk about that, Reed's commitment to the growth of women's ultimate. What was that like, having that conversation with him?
Well, as you mentioned, I had the opportunity to interview him on a couple of occasions. We contributed on an article on Sky Magazine when the scholarship was first announced, and then we also did a podcast together, Plastic Ranch podcast, that's online as well on SoundCloud. He's been inspired from those who have laid the foundation before him. He's become this is his first year as a pro, and as he took note of other pros, especially Sam Harkness, who once played for the Saddle Pro organization in the ADL, he saw the extension, the will, and the new efforts to close that gender gap, and he certainly wanted to bring that to his own hometown. So he's been all over that. As his star has grown, he wants to grow the star of his community as well.
That's incredible, and in fact, the Roughnecks were so moved by Reed Bacon's donation of his scholarship that they matched and had another grant that they funneled through the Dallas Ultimate community.
And that's a result Reed certainly was hoping for. He's certainly hoping for a certain sort of domino effect, not just only in his community, but across the country. And he's just one cog in the machine closing that gender gap.
And, that is something that is carried, that the Roughnecks really feel important, investing in that ultimate community, which is happening in London this week. As you know, a lot of those games are going to be streamed online and actually broadcast on TV, largely due to a Kickstarter that the Roughnecks participated in. The Roughnecks matched several $1,000s, and you see the players there who are out this week: Kurt Gibson, Cassidy Rasmussen, Dylan Freechild, Jimmy Mickle, and Bo Kittredge. Bo actually was cleared to cut right before he left for Worlds, so expect him to be taking the field. They have already played one game against Mexico, won 15-2. What do you think that, and actually there is one additional player who's playing on the mixed team for Worlds, who is Chris Mazer, not on the men's team, late addition, but we still have a pretty solid roster. So, and the player introductions are always a lot of fun out here.
Yes, we always have a very, very creative introductions, to say the least. Very, very informative of some quirks that some you'd like to know, some you question why you even heard them, but all a part of a Dallas Roughnecks home game, for sure.
That is very true. Well, I know both teams are really excited for the first pull and to let that get underway. We're excited for everyone who's watching live. Send us your comments, tweet at us, and we will have a really exciting, fun broadcast ahead of us.
A scorcher.
Here. It will be a scorcher, hopefully literally and figuratively. We'll be right back after the break with First Pull here on DallasRoughnecks.com.
What does the most experienced advertising agency look like? Miller Senior Staff brings an average of 18 years of experience to each meeting. 18 years. We know what works and what doesn't. Media and digital plans based on proven past performance. Creatives that sell first and never worried about awards or accolades. An account service that can lead your business based on 18 plus years of success. Our team is ready to join your team.
Early recognition is critical. Teaches middle school PE classes about ultimate frisbee and cancer symptom awareness.
We're a registered nonprofit that advocates for an active, healthy lifestyle, body awareness, and speaking up if something is wrong.
Skills that, when it comes to cancer, can help save a life. Ultimate is a fast-paced team sport that's self-refereed, non-contact, and co-ed.
Spirit of the game is the foundation of Ultimate. That means we communicate respectfully, we're fair-minded, and we enjoy the game.
Ultimate is accessible to everyone. All you need is a frisbee and some friends. Our team of coaches is made up of experienced and passionate leaders from the Ultimate community.
We teach kids that playing fair is more important than winning.
We can come to your middle school and run your PE classes for the day. And if we're not in your area yet, we'll send you our clinic in a box, where we give you the resources to run your own.
Ultimate Frisbee is one of the fastest growing sports in the world.
Teachers and parents love Ultimate Frisbee.
We are Eric!
And we want to work with you and your school.
And we are live here in the Colony as the Dallas Roughnecks are just moments away from the first pull against the Atlanta Hustle. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald alongside Greg Gibson, Paige Snorbach on the sidelines. Greg, how do you expect the hustle to really start the game today?
Well, I mentioned that it was very key for them to have a hot start. We put up the world's names, those who are absent from the Dallas franchise, and if you're an Atlanta player, you look at the names of those absentees and you want to jump all over this team from the start as much as you can. Last home game that Dallas played, Charlotte had a lot of success when they did have success, capitalizing on turnovers and really pushing the pace and boosting it very early on, really pushing transition pace. So it's up to Atlanta to really maintain intensity and mental focus throughout, overcome these conditions, and hopefully keep within striking distance, if not take an early lead from the start.
And it looks like Dallas will start on defense as Atlanta has the disc to start the pull. That has certainly been an advantage for Dallas. It seems like they've won the pull several times throughout the year, and we are underway here in the Colony as the pull goes out of bounds.
Please be aware.
Brandon Malachek will take the disc, well, I guess around the brick mark. So with the Big Five out, you see a little bit different makeup here on the O-line. Matt Jackson, typically on defense, is playing offense today. Thomas Slack passes to Stanley Peterson. Swings it over to Matt Jackson, to Malachek. That inside-out backhand back to Slack. Slack swings around to Kai Marshall. Great swing off the sideline back to Ben Laurie. Laurie looking for Costello. Costello to Jackson. And there's your first Dallas score.
Dallas utilized a lot of space from the initiation. We're very comfortable with making those break throws. Those flick arounds were carrying with the wind very easily, and they score with the ease of the first one.
And typically those same third kind of running away from the disc passes are very difficult to complete in other levels, but I guess Matt Jackson has such great closing speed and vertical reach, you could say, that really made that happen. Shout out to all of Matty J's friends and enemies out there in Arkansas. He doesn't have many enemies, though, I don't think.
He was once an enemy of mine. I had to coach against him once, but, I mean, how can you not admire and respect what he does?
It's incredible. So now Matt Bennett with the pull. Dallas on defense. Very high outside-in pull. Gives a lot of time for the Dallas defense to get down the field. Looks like Atlanta's starting in a bit of a side stack to kind of isolate movement in the center.
Might see Dallas utilize that quite a bit themselves on the offense as well. They did that the other week in their last home game, and they utilized it very well.
Kind of working it in the backfield. Now Atlanta moving into the vert stack. Whistle called on Dan Emmons.
No surprise there.
Surprised it took him this long,
Welcome
to be honest
home,
with you. Now swinging it around. Overhead, Dylan Larberg comes down with the D.
There you go, that small margin of error. The disc pops up, and it's all theirs.
Diving attempt by the Soul. Dan Emmons launches it to Jake Anderson, but a little out to the left. Atlanta disc.
Misjudged the wind a bit. Carried that outside in way over Jake's head.
And that goes out of bounds. Swatted out.
Long hook out of bounds.
So these back and forth hucks at the beginning of the game will, I'm sure, create some fatigue factors as we get into the second half.
Well, the transition into offense on both sides is definitely already giving off that Sunday feel.
And Matt Bennett to Dalton Smith, A&M teammates for the score. Dallas now 2-0 over Atlanta, 9:39 left in the game. So now Dallas is up 2-0. We will go down to Paige on the sidelines. Paige, what you got for us?
Thanks, Emmy. I'm down on the sidelines here. So far, the score is reflecting the confidence and enthusiasm the Roughnecks were showing in their early game huddle. If you thought that they were going to miss their best 6 players, they're showing us otherwise right now. All right, back to y'all up top.
Thanks, Paige. That is true, and you know that early start is something that the Roughnecks have done in a lot of their games, really capturing that lead early on and then also having the legs in the second half.
Well, early on in the season, they really were hard on themselves on what they felt like were sluggish starts and felt like they needed to really clamp down on competition that they should really be clamping down on. So I feel early starts is something that has been definitely a point of emphasis for them as they start to look ahead towards the postseason.
So back down on the field, Sam Little passes to Elliot Erickson. Swings back. Diving attempt by Matt Smith. Matt Smith looking up line for Nathan Vickroy. Vickroy launches it. A little bit of miscommunication. You have 3 Dallas defenders in the end zone. Now Dallas gets to work it all the way down the field. Ben Laurie bringing it up to the line. Swings it over to Zach Riggins. Zach Riggins looks for Ted Barnett streaking across midfield. Barnett launches it to Chris Larberg. The ref trying to get out of the way. Larberg comes down right outside the end zone. Swings it over to Reed Bacon. Reed's trying to keep it in, drags the foot, called out of bounds.
Oh, I don't know about that one. I felt that was in initially.
Now Leonard back with the disc. Leonard high upside down to Little. Little looking around for Spinks. Spinks back to Little. And the wind carries that swing out of bounds. Roughnecks take it a little past half field. So Dallas were so close to the end zone on their previous possession.
Ted made a great attack and launched it. Larberg with the boomstick on the sky, but I really thought Reed got that one in. I guess he didn't, and now Roughnecks have cleaned it up and got right back on the board.
Fortunately, on that next possession, they were able to complete in the end zone and now are up 3-0 over Atlanta. So you see a large outside in to Ted Barnett score Dallas.
His hook didn't quite get to the end zone, so he thought he'd just take care of it himself this time.
He had to lead it in this time. So we have Matt Bennett with the disc for the pull. 7:45 left here in this first half. Matt Bennett known for all of his creative throws, impressive lady outside in, lots of time.
Love to play with him, hate to play against him.
Swings it over to Burns. Burns up to Choi. Choi over to Tennell. Burns striking up line into the power position. Swings over to Erickson. Erickson swings back to Tennell. Diving attempt. Olsen still comes up with it. Swings back over to Lavoliet. Over the head of Choi, Dylan Larberg with the D.
Squandered red zone opportunity. Let that backhand just float and take off.
Proves costly, I'm sure. Now swinging it around, Stephen Darrow with the disc back to Dalton Smith. Matt Jackson in the center of the field. Launches. Dan Emmons tracking it down and jumps into the end zone with the score. Dallas 4, Atlanta 0. 6:39 left in the first quarter.
The Danimal is up and down the field early and often. Just missed a layout D on one end. And busting it deep on the other.
And at first it looked like there was a bit of a communication and there weren't any Roughnecks running deep, but thankfully Dan was able to really attack that, get that score.
If you are in the market for a home in the DFW area, be sure to check out DFW Homes.
It's a real shame Atlanta, it took a 3-0 deficit for them to start cutting harder, but it looks like they were a bit more lively on that last offensive stand. One throw, just punts it away.
Turnover right outside the end zone.
And now they're looking at a 4-0 deficit.
So they call a timeout. Really, I'm sure they're motivating the team. So, Greg, you coach a lot of teams. What do you say to your team right now, down 4-0 against the Roughnecks?
At this point, it's about taking everything that's easy. The defense is most certainly there. But the thing is their offense is certainly there. It's just a matter of fine-tuning each of these throws and not taking one for granted. They've proved that they can march up to this red zone. It's a matter of keeping mentally dialed in and just putting it in.
And Golden Ticket, for more than 25 years, has been the biggest source of tickets for the biggest events when the other ticket providers are sold out. Visit their website at goldentickets.com to learn more and get latest info on the latest events. We're coming out of the timeout here. Dallas is up 4-0 over Atlanta in the first quarter. Atlanta will have the disc on offense and face the scary Dallas defense. Certainly the Dallas O-line is great efficiency, but no teams like to face this Dallas defense. They just really know how to take care of business.
And I truly believe the Roughnecks really like to hang their hat on that defensive identity more so than that offense. That offense is clearly, when everyone's present, that offense is clicking on all cylinders. It's just too much speed and too much space, but it's the defense that they really use to clamp down late in games and really step on the throat of the opponent.
So the pull goes up to Atlanta. Leonard picks up the disc, swings to Tennell. Tennell.
Once again working out of that side stack.
They are. Tennell over. Now Smith throws it away. Dallas picks up Kevin Christian to Zach Riggins. Riggins over to Thomas Slack. Slack to Barnett. Barnett looking up line to Chris Larberg. Chris Larberg checks it back in. Up line to Casey Hogg. Casey Hogg swings over to Chris Larberg. Larberg activates Dylan Larberg, swings back over to Ted Barnett. Dish over to Zach Riggins. Another quick dish to Kevin Christian. Casey Hogg looking for the disc. Not quite open, but that does leave Chris Larberg open. And Dallas is now up 5-0.
A handler by nature, great poise by Kevin Christian to just wait for that best option to find itself.
I think all of the fakes just really keep the Atlanta mark on their toes, and then that creates those additional opportunities. So we really didn't have to force a throw into the end zone.
Absolutely. There was no resistance marching the way down the red zone, and when things got a little tighter, when there was far less green acres in the place to be, they took their time in marching it in there and found what they needed.
But at the same time, Atlanta had worked it past half field.
Once again.
Really approaching scoring position, and then a miscue is what really cost them that point.
At this point, if I'm the Atlanta coach, I want to put players in there that are essentially mentally dialed in and who are going to be able to finally close the door on one of these scores.
And this pull goes out the back. Atlanta walking it. Actually, they have to take it at the back of the end zone per AUDL rules. College Ultimate rules, you do walk it up, but that is not the case in the AUDL. Oh, and they are moving it up to the front of the end zone. Actually, they're moving it to the brick mark. Now taps it in. Knowles with the disc. Over to Little. Little in that power position. Looking up line. And a layout D by Jake Anderson on Robert Runner. Great bid from Jake Anderson.
UNT zone, Jacob Anderson not giving up and denying that upline throw.
Just check back into Matt Bennett in center field.
Of course it's the Scuba, right?
Scuba to Jake Anderson. Hung in the air, swings over to Stephen Darrow. Darrow puts it deep.
Here we go again.
To Dan Emmons, floats high in the air, veering right. Dan over the top, comes up with it right outside the end zone. Swings over to Darrow. Overthrow. Conservation of greatness, as they say.
Indeed, that's, I believe, 2 hucks completed to Danimal, but 2 that they could not quite put in the end zone afterwards.
So
I think Danimal will probably look for a dump.
Zone. I think a dump would have been better there. Dalton Smith with a contact call. 10-yard penalty. Laviolette looking over to Runner. Runner back over to Haskell. Haskell to Burns. Over to Little on the sideline. Looking for his handler activation. Sends a hammer over the top to Stapleton.
That's just not going to do against this Roughnecks defense.
That was kind of a last resort pass there. And a timeout called by Dallas. Just under 4 minutes left in this first quarter. Dallas up 5-0 over the Hustle.
Still in the first quarter, and
Paige is down on the sideline. Paige, what you got for us?
The Roughnecks are having to take a timeout. There seemed to be a little bit of confusion. Coach Patrick Eberle was having to remind the players on the sidelines to not yell so much. Let him be the one taking direction, as it's confusing the players on the field. But we'll see how that happens and if it works right after this break. Back to you, Emmy and Greg.
And we're back out of the timeout, or we're still in the timeout, I should say. Thank you, Paige. And as you could hear from Paige, Dallas really trying to get things under control, not force the disc, be calm, confident, but it's really Atlanta that has dug themselves into a bit of a hole right now. They have another chance, I guess, to collect their thoughts here.
Well, at this point, it seems the field, but you're going to have to be willing to D up if you're not going to be able to march all the way down. And Atlanta just has not been able to hike up their shorts and win back that disc.
Kai Marshall with the disc at center field, over to Stanley Peterson. Matt Costello wide open. Bit of a poach zone, poach D being played. Finds Stanley Peterson in the end zone. Now Dallas is up 6-0. It seemed like Atlanta was kind of trying to play the lanes there, but didn't quite pay off for them.
Yeah, the sagging is certainly understandable considering the high-profile offense that the Roughnecks have had, and considering the fact that they just not been able to stop them from moving down the field with ease, but not quite getting the job done.
And the Atlanta sideline telling their teammates to shake it off. There is a lot of Ultimate still to be played, and Ultimate is a game of runs that I'm sure Dallas does not want to take for granted or fall asleep, as they say.
This is a time when the Roughnecks could definitely be susceptible to a mental lapse. You know, also take note, even though it's still early on in the first, the heat is definitely taking its toll on some of the players on both sides already. Keep a lookout for that.
And Atlanta did play in Austin last night. They have the disc on the far sideline. Sam Gaynor dishes it over to Dylan Tennell, swings it over to Spinks. Spinks looking upfield, finds Smith on the swing. Looking back for Tennell. Tennell finds Laviolette underneath, or Taylor, I'm sorry, underneath. Austin Taylor with the hammer. Little out of reach for Sam Gaynor. Dallas back with the disc.
Essentially every Atlanta downfield cutter was occupying the deep space. You heard cries from the sideline, the Atlanta sideline, that you're too deep, you're too deep, forcing Taylor to eventually just throw a desperation hammer and hope for the best, to no avail.
Zach Riggins trapped on the sideline, finds it around to Kevin Christian. Lefty Kevin Christian finds Ted Barnett.
Intended for Reed Bacon, I believe.
Swings over to Chris Larberg. Chris Larberg launches it to Zach Riggins. And that's 7-0.
Mr. Larberg definitely waited a bit for Richard Riggins to develop his cut a bit. But when you do wait for the cut to develop that long, you have to absolutely put the just right amount of touch on it, and that's exactly what he did. Riggins runs it out with ease for another score.
And you're right, it seems like Atlanta has had those opportunities, but some communication errors. It's every cutter seems to be sort of wanting to be that playmaker. But if they're all in the deep space, then they're essentially acting like a defender for their other teammates.
Absolutely. Essentially at this point, you got to believe that Atlanta is mentally rattled to at least some extent. You got to wonder if perhaps Coach Greg maybe has some adjustments in his arsenal. If they can't march it down the field with 10 to 15 to 20 throws, maybe they need to shoot it a bit, rely on some ISOs and some deep shots. But clearly an adjustment needs to be made before the end of this first quarter.
And Atlanta back on offense. Knowles swings it over to Laviolette. I apologize for my mispronunciation. And a big put to Laviolette. And Atlanta is on the board.
Sure.
7-1, less than 2 minutes left in the first quarter.
Sorry, we didn't mean to speak over you there. Sure enough, when they take 3 to 4 throws and they go for that big shot, that longer shot, they get their first point and they're on the board finally before we get to the end of the first quarter.
And that's probably a lot of mental release there. Once you get on the board, you say, okay, we are not going to get bageled here. We've got a shot. The run starts now.
Absolutely. Now you want to call a very, very confident D-line that's going to absolutely pursue a deep inbound pull and hope to get the ball rolling and get some breaks.
The problem is they now have to face the Dallas O-line that is known for their incredible pass efficiency.
Have a bit of crossover with Jackson and Peterson both on this O-line.
So pull bounces off the ground, tips off Costello, swings it over to Malachek. Malachek in the center of the field, swings over to Laurie.
Bit of a different defensive look here from the hustle.
And it appears they're counting as with each pass, maybe moving from a poach into a man, now in a flick force. Ben Laurie on the near sideline, looking for swinging around Malachek in the center of the field. Malachek over to Kai Marshall. Marshall dumps it back to Malachek. Malachek to Marshall. Marshall dishes to Laurie. Laurie to Malachek. Malachek up to Jackson.
Not a lot of movement up top at the moment.
And Marshall slips a little bit, and it's a turn. Now Atlanta has the disc.
Certainly the opportunity Atlanta was looking for, but will they capitalize?
Olsen over to Sears. Stanley Peterson with the layout D and reception. Ben Laurie now with the disc, swings over to Malachek. Malachek on the near sideline. Inside out, over the head of Thomas Slack. Now Atlanta has it back. Knowles grabs the falling pass. Now runner with the disc on the near sideline, swings back to Knowles.
With this heat and that layout, you got to think Peterson's not too happy with his teammates at the moment.
And Kai Marshall intercepts at the end of the first quarter. Dallas up 7-1 over the Hustle. We'll be right back after this break with the second quarter here on DallasRoughnecks.com.
What does the most experienced advertising agency look like? Miller Senior Staff brings an average of 18 years of experience to each meeting. 18 years. We know what works and what doesn't. Media and digital plans based on proven past performance. Creatives that sell first and never worried about awards or accolades. An account service that can lead your business based on 18 plus years of success. Our team is ready to join your team.
Welcome back to the Colony for the start of the second quarter as the Dallas Roughnecks are up by 6 over the Atlanta Hustle. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald with Greg Gibson and Paige Schnorbach down on the sideline. So Greg, it's hot, it's sunny. How do you think the Roughnecks have really been able to carve out this 6-point lead in the first quarter?
Well, their speed, their level of play is clearly a level above Atlanta's, and we have the opportunity to sit just above the Atlanta sideline. What we see here is, I believe their coach, Coach Rigg, is telling them, given the fact that they're playing a tad slower than their opponent here, that they can't really advertise what they're trying to throw. And if they do advertise it, they need to fake and find a better option because they're selling the throws all day. And we saw the results such as Stanley Peterson getting airborne and patrolling his skies like we know he's going to do. So it's a matter of Atlanta upping the pace and upping their decisiveness.
And even the coaching staff before the game said last night part of their success against Austin was really taking pride in their identity and seeing that they know they should be good on paper and then that coming to fruition on the field. I would think that they want to try and capture some of that mojo that they felt last night and really apply that here today.
Absolutely, and the sideline's a bit melancholy, but they have to keep in mind that they're looking to solidify that third place position that they just earned just last night. Conditions are tough, it's a short turnaround, but they're playing for much, much more than just a game right here.
So Atlanta with the disc to Nell in center field, swings it over to Taylor. Taylor finding Vickroy in the center. Vickroy launches it, and it is still hanging, but just out of the reach of Matt Smith. Couldn't quite get there.
Couldn't really ask for it to hang much more. Casey Hogg, I do not believe, was going to quite get to that D. Had it hung up in the air, would have been another score for the visiting at Hustle.
But another missed opportunity for the Hustle. Now the Dallas offense is back. Ted Barnett launches it from the near sideline. Reed Bacon and Zach Riggins looking out. Zach Riggins following it. Dishes over to Reed Bacon. And it is now 8-1 Dallas. Less than a minute after the start of the second quarter, and Dallas answered Atlanta's offensive charge.
There you see another example of how the Roughnecks are just playing on a different level, different speed at the moment. That transition was killer on Atlanta, and they were doing nothing to resist.
Reed Bacon, first-year AUDL player, but very athletic. You see Zach Riggins follows where the disc is going to go, and Reed Bacon follows him into the end zone. Great conversion there between two pretty physical and athletic players.
Yeah, since his days at UNT, Zach Riggins has been known to get big in the air, but that time he played it more like a guy more my height, more like a 5'6" player, and just let it ride into his hands, catch it in the breadbasket.
Collecting the trash, as they say.
Absolutely.
Now Atlanta back in midfield. Sam Little with a big fake instead decides to dish it to Laviolette.
Decided wise not to test Matt Jackson's defense in the deep. Don't blame him.
Swings it over. Haskell on the far sideline. Reaching over. Saved by Little. Little looking deep. Instead, dish it to Laviolette. Laviolette back to Little. Little at the backhand break. And teammate couldn't quite get there. Elliot Erickson really trying to get there in time. Matt Bennett right outside the sideline. Up to Dalton Smith.
And there you see the difference in the transition between these two teams. They picked up and went instantly, the Roughnecks did, and they're looking to go off to the races. Haven't necessarily got anything up top yet, but they're looking to go immediately. They pick up and they get that defense moving.
That's really tiresome for another team. Still right outside the end zone. Finally gets it to Dalton Smith. Dalton Smith with the huck hanging in the air. We have Dan Emmons. And Dan Emmons again with the grab over the top. Calls the timeout right outside the goal. Dan with the throwaway earlier, I'm sure trying to make sure more teammates are there. Although, since this is a game played by time, not so much possession as standard ultimate might be played, the timeout right outside the end zone isn't always the best use of your timeout.
Most certainly. If we had someone with more fine-tuned throwing, you definitely would have kept going on that play. But as we mentioned, Danimal has shown that he needs to conserve a bit. We've had a couple of throwaways after catching some big huts, so he made a wise call for himself as an individual player making that timeout.
And Paige Snorbach is down on the sideline. Paige, what you got for us?
Hey, during their last timeout, I spoke to Jake Anderson, and he told me the team talked about not being stagnant on offense and really trying to throw the disc more. So despite the fact they're up 7 goals, it doesn't seem like the Roughnecks will be slowing down anytime soon. Emmy and Greg?
Thanks, Paige. And I think that's a very good point to be made. No matter what the score is, you never want to be complacent or develop those bad habits as the playoffs are less than a month away.
It can be a slippery slope once you fall into a mental lapse and let a team start creeping back. There's certainly plenty of time left. As we see, we here have 4 quarters similar to basketball, so plenty of time yet for this Hustle team to claw their way back in if they can fine-tune some things here.
Dalton Smith with the disc, dishes it over to Matt Bennett. Matt Bennett to Dylan Larberg, but not quite there. Anders Olsen with the D. And a quick turn. Olsen with the grab right outside the end zone. He looks for Little. Little with the upside-down scooter over to Laviolette. Laviolette still not in. Looking for that easy in. Sun Choi. Sun Choi finds an opening, and it is now Dallas 8, Atlanta 2. 9:21 left in the second quarter.
A red zone folly for the Roughnecks. Matt Bennett's around backhand break was a bit too around. Wind popped it up a bit. Atlanta was able to force the turn, and they were off to the races.
And let's take a look at that defensive play there. And that Olsen, who got the D, has this great layout grab right outside the end zone, now kind of forcing Dylan Larberg to help and sort of play a rabbit there on the disc.
Wasn't the most organized red zone, but they were capitalizing on transition, busted it down the field, and caused the Roughnecks defense to scramble, able to put it in.
So now Dallas offense back on the field. Brandon Malachek in the center of the field, swings it over to Matt Jackson. Barely up, whistle blown, and the ref does call it down. So now Atlanta in scoring position.
The ref's going to have to do a better job of not being a reactionary call. It definitely was down, but you can't just make that call because players griped at you.
Have to agree with you there. So Atlanta converts their first break on the Dallas offense. Now close the gap to 5. It's now 8-3 with 9 minutes on the dot left in that second quarter.
We mentioned a mental lapse, and the Roughnecks very well may be in the midst of one. Doesn't seem like there's going to be much of a line change, though, however. They're going to line right back up and get right back to it.
And the offense really wasn't on the field for very long, so it seems like they should be able to kind of figure out what they're doing.
Given this margin, they've earned the opportunity to win it back.
So the pull goes up. Hits right outside the end zone. Costello picks it up, sends it to Malachek. Malachek swings it over to Christian. Christian looking in the center of the field to Laurie. Laurie without a mark at first. Now back to Malachek. Atlanta playing the lanes. Peterson on the near sideline.
Once
dishes
again,
it back
throws.
to Laurie. Laurie to Jackson. Jackson finds Kevin Christian with that big OI swing all the way across to Costello. Costello up the line to Laurie, and another score for Dallas. 9, Atlanta 3. So let's talk about this defense, the defensive set that Atlanta is playing right now. Seems like kind of playing the lanes, sort of a poach defense, would you say, Greg?
Definitely poaching the lanes, maybe a junkie zone you'd probably label it as, but they're counting the throws and hoping that after a certain amount of throws they can transition to either making them believe they're going to man or a true man and hopefully forcing a turnover, but it has not shaken the Roughnecks thus far.
Yeah, it seems like they're able to stay calm and put up enough fakes to kind of move that junkie zone enough.
Sometimes it's about utilizing the swings before you find something upfield. Getting that defensive moving side to side to create the openings.
Now Dallas with the big pull, going in about halfway through the end zone. Leonard with the disc right on the goal line, double teamed. Dishes it over to Gaynor. Contact called on player coach Patrick Eberly. Atlanta advances the disc 10 yards. We see Dylan Tennell running deep, sets up for that deep huck, and Atlanta converts. Is that Tennell?
It's Spinks, actually.
Spinks. It was Tennell with the throw and the assist to Spinks with the score. So that will be Dallas 9, Austin 4, slowly chipping away at that lead.
Immediately after the whistle, Spinks looked to bust deep. Reed Bacon didn't realize he was alone on an island and just didn't have the legs to keep up with them. And Hustle R&D chipping away at that score here in the second quarter. A game of runs indeed.
And it was essentially with that penalty, Dallas almost putting Atlanta in a power position of sorts, kind of more up the field, gets them time to set up.
And a great heads up by Spinks to realize he had so much space, and the look wasn't there at first, but he's already still open and still deep. There's still space to run, and he kept running until it was sent his way.
And the pull into the end zone, Matt Bennett now on the O-line, handling with Costello and Malachek. Costello now with the disc, swings it around to Slack. Slack tracks it down on the sideline, up to Laurie.
A lot of
Laurie
slipping out there today.
His handler swings it over to Jackson. Jackson back to Costello. Costello swings it over to Bennett. Bennett finds Slack. Quick dishes from Jackson to Bennett. Back to Jackson. Up to Slack. Atlanta chasing a little bit right now. Finds Ben Laurie. Just working up that force side.
Nothing fancy about that. And the Roughnecks have proven throughout the season that they're very, very comfortable with moving up the force side. At times, usually when you have a team, you admonish them and you condemn them running it up the force side. But the Roughnecks have proven time and time again that they're very comfortable with doing that and do so to score again and get back on the board.
A little bit of taking what they give you.
Absolutely.
Seemed Atlanta chasing a little bit on defense, and so Atlanta saying, okay, or Dallas saying, all right, we'll take it.
Nothing fancy about it, just taking everything that the defense gave them.
So Matt Bennett back for a second consecutive point with the disc to pull.
Costello remains as well.
Kind of keeping that consistent handler set. Another big tall pull. Lands in the end zone. Gives Dallas more time to get down the field. Dalton Smith arrives. Leonard over to Smith. Smith dishes it. Now it's up to Vickroy. Whistle on the call. Contact. Vickroy advances 10 yards. Costello there on the mark.
Jake Anderson up top a little gimpy after.
Tennell with the big hammer right outside the end zone to Smith. It's a 3-on-1 right now. Bennett catches up. And Matt Smith with the score. Now Dallas 10, Atlanta 5. 6:25 left in the second quarter.
Steven Darrow did his best to guard two hustle players on his own. Matt Bennett came in for a bit of help, but it was too little too late after that booming hammer.
Big hammer, great read from Matt Smith there. And you can see Darrow kind of trying to play the space in between two people, but when he went over to give help there, leaves Smith wide open.
There's only so much he could do.
So now Dallas offense on the field. A little bit of adjustment. Casey Hogg now playing on the O-line. Typically has been a D-line player so far this season.
Seems the more and more the hustle creep back in, the more and more Coach Patrick Eberle has been putting in people to really maintain possession, whether it be on offense or after a turn, or after forcing a turn, rather.
So Brandon Malachek taking it over to the brick mark.
Are we sure Malachek's a brand new father? He's clean shaven. You'd think as a brand new father he'd be completely bearded. I for one prefer his beard.
And Atlanta appearing to still have that poach defense on big around from Jackson to Matt Costello. Matt Costello unguarded for several counts there. Swings it over to Ben Laurie. Now Matt Jackson back to Ben Laurie. A big, good give and go. Back and forth between Laurie and Jackson. Looks for Malachek in the end zone. Malachek for the score, and Paige has an injury update for us. Paige?
I just spoke to Kai Marshall, who is being sidelined right now, foam rolling his hamstring. He said he doesn't think it's pulled, but when he runs, it feels like it would pull. So he's trying to get that worked out. He wants to get back in the game as fast as he can. That actually is why we've seen Patrick Eberle, the coach, out on the field today. Kevin Christian was telling me that with them down a couple players in London and now Kai Marshall on the sideline, they need everyone they can get. Greg and Emmy?
Thanks, Paige. And Kai Marshall is certainly a big part of the Dallas offense. He and Thomas Slack have combined for 70-plus goals just in 6 weeks of play. Pretty staggering. But at the same time, Coach Patrick Eberle has a pretty impressive resume himself. Played for Austin Double Wide for several years.
He didn't seem that gung-ho about having to suit up for his troops today, though. When we interviewed him, but he might have just been focused on the task at hand. Also, a little tight in those warm-ups, but I'm sure he's loosened up by now.
Now Atlanta really working it up the field. A big dish into power position for Tennell. Tennell finds Austin Taylor. Launches it deep to Smith, hanging in the air. Two Dallas defenders. And Reed Bacon with the disc. Over to Kevin Christian. Kevin Christian swings to Ted Barnett. Barnett swings over to Zach Riggins. Riggins on the about 10 yards off the sideline. Finds Christian Larberg. To Casey Hogg in the center of the field. Swings all the way across, back to Zach Riggins. High release backhand to Patrick Eberle. Eberle with that IO flick outside of the reach of Ted Barnett. Atlanta gets another chance. Dylan Tennell picking it up, walking it up to the sideline.
Roughnecks did everything right. Typically, once they've gotten the break throw off, the leaks become an avalanche. Only they couldn't capitalize in the end zone. Just too low, too far out.
Now Atlanta swinging it all the way across the field. We have Taylor, the big backhand, hanging, and the diving attempt by Max Leonard for the score. So that is Roughnecks 11, Hustle 6, with a little over 4 minutes left in the second quarter.
Now a 5-part margin. You got to hope Atlanta's going to want to capitalize on that. Taylor busts it out where only he could get it. Gets the full extension.
Leonard with that great read. Shakertons is today's official after party. So all of you Dallas fans who are watching this live stream in the cool air conditioning, you should head on out to our official after party at Shakerton's. Shakerton's has great craft cocktails. They have flatbreads. And in fact, today, if you mention the Dallas Roughnecks after the game, you get 25% off your ticket. It's a swanky neighborhood bar, restaurant, lounge located in the Austin Ranch Luxury Apartment Complex on Windhaven. They focus on craft cocktails and fresh ingredients. See you at Shakerton's. We're back in the game. Dallas on offense. Matt Costello with the disc. Swings it over to Matt Bennett. Bennett to Slack. Slack dishes it back to Bennett. Finds Peterson. Peterson to Laurie. Laurie to Slack. Slack on the far sideline. Swings it back to Laurie. Laurie continues over to Malachek. Malachek with that IO to Costello. A great continue to Jackson in the end zone. Score, Dallas 12, Atlanta 6. Very chilly offense there, right, Greg?
Indeed, and it really felt like the pace was, I don't want to say slow, more methodical, very, very comfortable pace. They weren't necessarily the most agile in changing direction and moving that disc around, but Atlanta certainly wasn't catching up, so there was no need.
And it seems like the Dallas players had a lot of patience, too. They didn't necessarily take the first look that was kind of contested, but really waited for that proper opportunity. And thankfully, their cutters and handlers kept moving, creating space to give them that opportunity. So the pole is up again. High and floating, caught by Atlanta, swinging over to Leonard. Leonard to Spinks. Stapleton looking for that activation, and a stall called. That is a turnover, puts Dallas in scoring position. Matt Bennett.
It's almost a shame.
He's going to take up the disc.
Would have liked that blade to have counted.
Right. Bennett swings over to Dalton. Dalton, quick dish back to Smith. Back to Dalton. That working that give and go. Not enough. Spinks slaps it down. Atlanta back on offense. Vickroy swings it over to Taylor, I believe. Taylor on that near sideline. Back to Spinks. Spinks flow and go to Leonard. Leonard looking for Taylor. Gets that around off to Taylor. Taylor back over to Stapleton. Stapleton to Leonard. Leonard fakes overhead. Over to Vickroy. And intercepted in the end zone by Dan Emmons. Emmons to Laurie. Laurie kind of dragging his foot to stay in bounds. Puts Bennett in that power position. Not quite enough receivers upfield. Contested grab. Laurie stays with it. Sends it to Anderson. Anderson to his UNT comrade Dan Emmons with the bookends.
Cue the Sweet Georgia Brown music on that play.
Roughnecks 13, Atlanta 6, 1:46 left in the second quarter.
Clearly Atlanta turned it over on their own unforced error, but what Dallas is able to do to keep themselves in a defensive point when Atlanta's moving down the field is really recovering on the break throws. They get a break throw off, and that defender is there to cut off that next throw and really stop the bleeding.
And they don't call him Dirty Dan for nothing. So fierce on defense, and then right there for those sick grabs and those continues
and
on offense.
And that interesting spike. I'll give him a 7 on that one.
We know he could do better.
Indeed. It's hot, so we'll forgive him.
So now Dallas 13, Atlanta 6. Ted Barnett with the pull. And if you're Atlanta, it's a lot of points for your offense to play consecutively as well.
At this point, it looks wise on more than one front that they brought 21 as opposed to the usual 18, because if they're going to keep having to play offense, then they'll certainly need all 21.
So Atlanta takes it from the break mark. Quick launch into the end zone. Chris Larberg doesn't get there quite in time. Nate Haskell with the goal. Quick score. Now it's 13-7. Dallas leading Atlanta. 1:40 left in the second quarter.
You know, Atlanta's ran that play a couple of times, a side stack with one man ISO'd in that space by themselves, but they hadn't yet attacked that first deep shot with the first throw. I believe that's the first time they did it, and it bears a positive result.
And considering that the Atlanta offense has had to play so many points, a essentially two-pass point is great for their energy conservation also.
Absolutely. You wouldn't be surprised to see a bit more of that as we get later into the game, whether that be because of tired legs or just the adjustment because of the fact that Dallas isn't giving up much as they march down the field.
So now the Dallas offense is back with Robert Runner, the pull, hanging. It's just a little past midfield, but pretty good position for Dallas to receive the
Lane
disc.
sagging once again.
Matt Costello over to Thomas Slack. Slack in the middle of the field, dishes it to Ben Laurie. Laurie patiently looking for his next option to Dylan Larberg. Larberg with a big backhand to Thomas Slack, and that's a quick score for Dallas. Dallas 14, Atlanta 7.
If you're going to poach lanes, you have to have your head on a swivel. You have to be aware of someone streaking coming in behind you for a disc that's being thrown, and that just isn't happening for the Atlanta Wings, especially as they sag in these lanes. They're letting cutters streak and come from right behind them to grab that disc. And essentially, even though it's not a traditional zone, you are still guarding somewhat of a zone. You can't let that happen.
And it seems like the sidelines are kind of a vulnerable position for them in this zone as well. I think at least 3 of the scores that Dallas has had against that defense has been a continue, backhand continue, or a flick continue on the same sideline.
Once that swing is there's no one recovering, and there's simply no one home for them, and it's an easy score for the Roughnecks.
So now Dallas D-line back on the field. Matt Bennett with the pull. An IO backhand, a little bit flatter than some of the other pulls that we've seen from him. Now Tennell with the disc. Looks under. Finds Taylor. Taylor over to Gaynor. Gaynor to Vickroy. Danimal with that big mark, finds a big hammer from Vickroy, and that is a score from Atlanta. Trenton Spinks doing a good job reading that hammer all the way in.
Indeed. Vickroy, was Vickroy in the hammer, correct?
Yes, Vickroy threw that hammer, and then Spinks, I think, had the reception.
Take a look
there.
here.
Let's see.
Vickroy indeed on the hammer.
Replay.
Vickroy to Spinks indeed. Vickroy led the hustle last night in their overtime victory with 5 points and 5 assists. Hopefully they can get him going here today and they can mount a comeback.
And Vickroy has experienced some ultimate success recently. D3 national champion.
With Georgia College, yes.
So I'm sure he has some of that championship juju, wants to rub off on the rest of his team. And if you're Dallas, yes, you got that big hammer. Let that big hammer off, but you want a more difficult throw to be the only option. Now Dallas back on offense. Malachek with the disc. Big huck right away, looking for Thomas Slack. Hanging in the end zone, 2 defenders, and knocked out of his hands.
Slack got over him, but couldn't quite bring it in, and we think we're going to have an injury call.
Looks like Anders Olsen, a little slow to get up, signals for that injury call.
Atlanta sideline wanted a foul, but they're not going to get it.
And that play was just right in the view of head ref Julie Morris, who has a lot of experience observing and as a referee.
Pro, college, and club. Every level she has been there.
So now Atlanta picks up. J.P. Burns checks it in on the sideline. Diving attempt. Taylor stays with it. Swings it across. Laviolette looking. Big advancement. Little. And a tip by Chris Larberg. Dallas back on offense.
That wasn't the first throw of their possession. That was behind the cutter. They finally paid for it.
Bobbling catch to Peterson. It's up in the air. Can Matt Jackson come down with it? And he toes it in.
At the buzzer.
It is at the buzzer, right into half. The disc is for a score. At the end of the half, Dallas 15, Atlanta 8. And Matt Jackson, twinkle toes, really making sure he could read the disc, but then also staying inbounds. 7-point lead for Dallas. We'll be back after the break for some halftime highlights on DallasRoughnecks.com.
Early recognition is critical. Teaches middle school PE classes about ultimate frisbee and cancer symptom awareness.
We're a registered nonprofit that advocates for an active, healthy lifestyle, body awareness, and speaking up if something is wrong.
Skills that, when it comes to cancer, can help save a life. Ultimate is a fast-paced team sport that's self-refereed, non-contact, and co-ed.
Spirit of the game is the foundation of Ultimate. That means we communicate respectfully, we're fair-minded, and we enjoy the game.
Ultimate is accessible to everyone. All you need is a frisbee and some friends. Our team of coaches is made up of experienced and passionate leaders from the Ultimate community.
We teach kids that playing fair is more important than winning.
We can come to your middle school and run your PE classes for the day. And if we're not in your area yet, we'll send you our clinic in a box, where we give you the resources to run your own.
Ultimate Frisbee is one of the fastest growing sports in the world.
Teachers and parents love Ultimate Frisbee.
We are Eric!
And we want to work with you and your school.
No question you're that strong. No words can never hold you down. They said we'd never get it. They said we'd never win. They said we'd never get it. Never doubt me. They said we'd never get it.
I'm Matthew JC. JC All-Stars here. This is Drunken Cow Jerky. This is the best jerky in all the land. Trust me.
Never doubt me. It's all a lie. You feel this fight. That's just more fuel for you. Don't lose your mind. It's worth your strife. Take hold. It's all for you.
Roughnecks here at the Colony Sports 5-Star Sports Complex. Special Father's Day shout out. We've got Paige Snorbach. Paige, what you got?
I'm here with Brandon Malachek. He's a Roughnecks player and first-time father. Happy Father's Day.
Oh, thank you.
I know you had a baby just a few days ago. Tell me about that.
It's been a really exciting time. Julie had our baby on Wednesday, baby girl. We named her Isabel Eagle, and she's pretty cute.
So what have these past few days been like as a first-time father?
They've been pretty hectic. They've been really fun and exciting.
Are you losing a lot of sleep, or?
A couple nights. It's been tough, taking shifts and duties.
So did you think that was going to affect your performance today?
I hope not.
Okay, so we're talking about this game now. You're missing your top 5 players. They're in London for Worlds. Yep. How did y'all adjust that for your game?
We knew it was going to be a challenge, especially a day game out here in the wind, and Atlanta's a really good team. So we came out really strong in the first half and kind of took control of the game.
And Kai Marshall may be injured with a hamstring. He doesn't know yet. He's your top scorer on the team. So what kind of adjustments will y'all have to make around him if he can't come back in?
It's going to be next roughneck up, I guess. On offense, getting guys out there who are going to make deep cuts and score.
And you're playing Atlanta Hustle. Y'all played them before, won 26-20. Does that mean y'all were nervous at all coming into this or pretty confident about how it was going to go?
We had a good game with them down in Atlanta. They gave us a really good test, and I think we just responded here today and played a little bit better.
And y'all are one of the few undefeated teams left in the league. Does that increase the pressure on your team, or does that make y'all feel good every time y'all go into a game?
I think we want to rise to the challenge, and really you finish strong.
Okay, so what are y'all going to talk about during the halftime about how to do this next half?
Just to bring the intensity and get the Ds and wrap it up.
All right, well, thank you so much, and good luck in the next half, and happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Thank you, Paige. And we will have more coverage right after the break. You're watching the Dallas Roughnecks on DallasRoughnecks.com.
What does the most experienced advertising agency look like? Miller Senior Staff brings an average of 18 years of experience to each meeting. 18 years. We know what works and what doesn't. Media and digital plans based on proven past performance. Creatives that sell first and never worried about awards or accolades. An account service that can lead your business based on 18 plus years of success. Our team is ready to join your team.
An exciting first half here in the Colony. The Dallas Roughnecks came off to a pretty strong start against the Atlanta Hustle. At some point, up 7-0 before the Hustle finally were able to get a point on the board. I'm Amy Fitzgerald here with Greg Gibson and Paige Schnorbach. Greg, how does Dallas stay mentally strong and not say, okay, yeah, we're up by 7, we're good?
I think just naturally they're a competitive bunch, really. It's never enough, especially when they've only competed for 2 quarters. They really thrive and they really like to shine best in the second half. So I think really they just want to compete with each other just as much as they want to compete with those who are across the field from them.
Exactly. And you see some fathers and sons and daughters out there on the field for a little friendly competition here at the half. We're going to take a look at some highlights here from the first half. Real sunny day out here in the Colony. People looking for shade as much as they could. Dallas offense really being that story, whether it was working it right up the line. You can see Matt Jackson, highest point there, and really utilizing those give and goes.
Speed, space, they've been, as always, comfortable marching it up the force line, but the break throws have been really key as well. Once they get one break throw going, it just continues and continues until they march it into the end zone. There's really been very little resistance from that Atlanta defense.
Big layout D there from Jake Anderson. Defensive intensity also really key factor. You could see there even Atlanta with that big defensive effort against Dylan Larberg.
50-50 discs or something the Roughnecks are absolutely love. They get wide eyes for them, and they definitely want to be the ones who have the upper hand in that. So they treat essentially almost any throw as a 50-50, especially as we saw Jake Anderson ding that upline throw.
Excellent timing there from Max Leonard on the bid there. We are in halftime with plenty of Ultimate to come with the third quarter underway. Stay tuned. You're watching DallasRoughnecks.com.
Does the most experienced advertising agency look like? Miller Senior Staff brings an average of 18 years of experience to each meeting. 18 years. We know what works and what doesn't. Media and digital plans based on proven past performance. Creatives that sell first and never worried about awards or accolades. An account service that can lead your business based on 18 plus years of success. Our team is ready to join your team.
Welcome back to the second half here at the 5-Star Complex in the beautiful Colony, Texas on this hot and sunny day. We are ready for some second half action. The Dallas Roughnecks against the Atlanta Soul on this Father's Day. Two fathers on the team. Brandon Malachek, we heard from a moment ago, spoke with Paige Schnorbach, and Patrick Eberly, you see there, just walked out of frame. He has two kiddos of his own, two boys who maybe they'll be ultimate players, a future Dallas Roughnecks team.
You've got to certainly bet Malachek's child will grow up to continue on the Malachek ultimate legacy. Both of her parents are deadly with their throws, especially the deep backhands, both of them.
No kidding. Both mom and dad Malacheks have incredible pulls and hucks. And everything. And just nice people,
Indeed.
too. They're fun to be around. Julie, if you're watching with little baby Malachek, hello. We miss you out here at the field, but hope to see you guys soon. So, both teams are back out on the line. I'm sure Atlanta is really looking to make a quick splash here in the second half. They're with the disc, pulling. Dallas starting on offense again in here in this third quarter.
Atlanta certainly placed themselves in a bit of a catch-22 where defensively they want to sag the lanes to save the legs, but at the same time, they're going to have to force the occasion pretty soon to start forcing these breaks.
Back in their junk zone, Malachek with the disc. Swings it over to Costello. Costello, short dish over to Jackson. Jackson back to Malachek. Malachek with the big blade to Jake Anderson. Falls short. Laviolette picks it up. Over to Little, to Knowles. Swings back over to Laviolette. Haskell to Olsen. Now Olsen double teamed, finds space. Over to Goforth. Goforth. Big score for Atlanta to start this second half. Their offense converts.
That high release backhand just makes it either over or through the hands of, I believe, Malachek to get in the end zone.
So Olsen with that double team finds Goforth. Goforth with that big high release backhand. And Laviolette makes sure he toes the line to stay in bounds. So Atlanta really starts strong, really sends a message to start this second half.
Well, Malachek's hammer falls short. That's the type of mental mistake they've got to hope for, and when those do occur, they have to absolutely capitalize. The pace was great on that transition. Defense was never really, for the Roughnecks, was never really able to get quite settled, and they capitalized. And a break is very, very crucial, if not now, then very early on in this third quarter for the hustle.
So Dallas offense back on the field. Atlanta with their junk zone. Matt Jackson kind of looking for his best option to Dalton Smith. Quickly to Ben Laurie, back to Smith. Smith kind of trapped on the sideline, finds Jackson with the dump. Big swing across the middle to Costello. Costello reaches it at the highest point. Bit of an air bounce flick. Thomas Slack scoobers up top. Little risky throw for Peterson. Now the Hustle have to work it all the way upfield. JP Burns with the disc. Looking over Laviolette. Over to Knowles. Back over to Goforth. Goforth to Haskell. Haskell to Olsen. Olsen checks it back in. Trapped on the sideline. Up the line to Knowles. Knowles up the line again to Haskell.
The Ultimate's getting a bit clumsy on both sides.
Sam Little now with the disc. Looking to get it off the line. He does to Anders Olsen. Dishes it back. And Burns over on the break side. And here's another Atlanta score. Number 15, Nate Haskell, very active on that point. Now they've trimmed 2 points off of their deficit to lead or to trail Dallas by 5. Just under 10 minutes to go in the third quarter.
They have been in this position before, trimming the margin down to 5. It's just a matter of how they respond here and now.
So that was an offensive break that Atlanta had on Dallas. I could hear Dallas offense saying that it was either offense or a heckler saying that was embarrassing. Maybe both, but I'm sure it's the sentiment felt by whoever it was. Others too. And Bennett catches the pull, dishes to Costello. Costello to Malachek. Malachek swings it all the way across to Jackson. Back to Malachek.
Once again, we give them a bit of Dallas gives them a bit of run and react with a very, very anchored line with Costello, Bennett, and Malachek, and Kevin Christian on the line.
Very handler-heavy line here. Even Matt Jackson plays D-line handler. Ben Laurie gets it off the line to Matt Bennett. Malachek striking to Phil with Jackson. Jackson inside out to Malachek. Malachek looking at his options, decides to swing to Bennett. Bennett back to Malachek. Swings over to Larberg. Dylan Larberg with the contested grab. Over to Matt Bennett. Finds Kevin Christian unguarded in the center of the field. No mark right now. Plenty of time. Back to Matt Bennett. Atlanta still in their zone despite Dallas being so close to the end zone. Ben Laurie in the middle of the field. Back to Jackson, back to Laurie. Dylan Larberg right outside the end zone. Double teamed now to finds Malachek with the dump. It's a possession game now. Dallas just lots of small throws.
Gotta admire the hustle defensive stand right here.
To Laurie, Costello. Laurie cutting with that strike cut. Finds the goal. It is 16 Dallas, 10 Atlanta. Just under 8 minutes left in the third quarter.
Looks like Robert Runner at the end of that point there just ran out of steam, and Laurie was able to run right through him and had space for days to haul in the goal.
It is impressive, though, how many throws Atlanta forced Dallas to make on that point. Just as impressive as Nationwide Overspray and all of the work that they do, removing overspray and other particulates from vehicles. They are the leader to help with those overspray issues. They're the finest name in overspray removal. The removal process is 100% by hand. No mechanical buffers, and your car will look the same or better when the job's finished. It's detailing on steroids. Call us at 800-345-1269 if you have overspray, or just tell your insurance you want Nationwide Overspray on the job.
Got to tell you, Amy, that was a great segue to an ad there. I got to give it to you on that one.
Well, now Atlanta is picking up the disc inside half field in favorable scoring position. Tennell with the disc. Dishes it over to Leonard. Leonard back to Tennell. Swings it over to Spinks. And big hammer from Gaynor over to Little. Easy high release flick to Leonard. And another Atlanta score, a 3-1 run for Atlanta in the second half so far.
Coach Eberle took the risk of, he was in the back of the stack, he took the risk of hanging under his man. And he was made to pay for it. Couldn't quite catch up and make a defensive play on that throw.
And typically against other teams, the third quarter is where you kind of start to see some of those legs show. Atlanta did have a game yesterday, but at the same time, they have the same number of players rostered as Dallas. And the heat is the foe of everyone.
Indeed.
So big pull goes up. Ben Laurie with the reception. Malachek swings over to Costello. Costello to Jackson. Jackson slips a little bit, still catches it. Back to Costello. Costello, Blady flick to Jackson. Jackson to Laurie in the middle. Finds Costello unguarded. Slack,
there is
center of the field.
Little to no presence in the mid of this zone.
Chris Larberg, high release backhand to Costello. Now it looks like that Atlanta has moved into more of a man coverage. Costello finds Jackson in the back of the end zone, and Dallas is on the board. 17, Atlanta 11, just under 7 minutes in the third quarter. And Matt Jackson does a great job watching where he is in the end zone, but then also keeping his eye on the disc. And we've got Paige on the sideline. Paige, what you got for us?
Well, I spoke to Kai Marshall. It's official. He's out for the rest of the game. He's changed into sandals. Dan Emmons was actually teasing him about not getting to pad his stats this week since Kai Marshall is the leading scorer. He and I talked. He said this is more of a precautionary measure than necessary, but he knows he needs to save himself for the upcoming playoffs. Back to you, Greg and Emmy.
Sorry to hear that about Kai Marshall, but glad that he is listening to his body, taking care of himself. Certainly, I'm sure his Apes of Wrath teammates and comrades are cheering him on. We wish you well, Kai. Back on the field, Atlanta with the disc, Tennell in the center of the field. Bid attempt from Matt Jackson. Spinks with the disc on the far sideline. And overthrows Leonard.
Another
some
throw
pressure.
behind the cutter.
So Kevin Christian going to pick up the disc. Reed Bacon underneath. Swings over to Chris Larberg. Larberg quick dish to Ted Barnett. Ted Barnett dumps to Matt Bennett. Big yardage gain by Zach Riggins. Riggins looking for his dump, finds Bennett. Blady flick for Casey Hogg, right out of his reach.
I think he got a fingertip on it, just not quite able to haul it in.
Casey Hogg was definitely open, but that was a hard angle, I think, to catch the pass there.
We've seen other Roughnecks try to take that angle earlier in the game to no avail.
Spinks is kind of all by himself in the backfield, but the disc is double teamed. They do not throw it to him. Still in the end zone. Leonard looking for Taylor. Taylor over to Smith. Smith back over. Vickroy catches it with Spinks unguarded. Chris Larberg trying to catch up. Too much room to gain, and Atlanta scores another goal. It is 17-12 Dallas with about 5:23 left in the third quarter. Well, our next home telecast is July 9th, and you can watch the game as it happens on DallasRoughnecks.com. The Roughnecks will be playing the Raleigh Flyers, and it will be the last home game of the season. So join us at 7 p.m. Central on DallasRoughnecks.com. We have a great time on all of these broadcasts, and it's even more fun to watch it as it happens. So much happening on social media and exciting play on the field.
By that time, the Roughnecks will definitely have the division wrapped up. Still, the Flyers are going to give them quite the test.
That swing pass kind of hung in the air. Brandon Malachek still catches it. Matt Costello passes to Matt Jackson. Jackson to Laurie. A lot of hustle players very close to the disc. Now Costello with it. Over to Laurie on the sideline. To Jackson. Finds Thomas Slack totally unguarded. And the Roughnecks return, scoring in a similar fashion to how the Atlanta team scored previously. For now 18 points on the board for Dallas.
Just too many holes, not enough legs on the part of Atlanta. Even though it's a zone, you still have to use your legs to hustle to those key areas on the field to recover. And it seems like that 5-point margin is just, at least up till now, that's just the wall that Atlanta seems to keep hitting. Can't quite get past that margin.
And how do these Roughnecks players stay cool when they're out here? I mean, it's so hot outside. They reach for their ultra hydro-filtered Bear water. It's ultra clean, refreshing Bear water with no artificial flavors, color, or sugar. Bear water. Tastes good. And a rolling pull from Dylan Larberg rolls out of bounds on the far sideline, probably to set up a double team scenario. Atlanta with it in the end zone right now. Swings it over to Spinks. Over to Gaynor. Gaynor swings to Vickroy. Vickroy's right outside the end zone. Gaynor over to Leonard. Leonard to Spinks. Spinks to Taylor. Back to Gaynor. Launching to Tennell in the end zone. Larberg with the D. The disc hung just long enough for Dylan Larberg to get there. Now Stanley Peterson picking up the disc to go the full field. You can see that great timing from Dylan Larberg there.
Didn't even see him in the play originally, looking live on the field and not at the screen. Didn't even see him, came in at the last second. It seemed like that was all but foregone.
And Tennell invoked the integrity rule, calling a foul on himself, which is why Dallas received a 10-yardage advantage. Now Dylan Larberg back with the disc. Swings over to Matt Bennett. Matt Bennett sees Dan Emmons streaking deep. Dan Emmons tracking it down. And the score, Dallas.
Austin Taylor on the other end, meanwhile, seems to be concerned with the call. He was so concerned he didn't bother guarding Matt, who catches it and boosts it deep to Dan, and they're still discussing the matter right now.
And that was great timing on Dan Emmons' part as well, watching when Matt Bennett received the disc in that power position, so he could really gain some separation from his defender.
It's one thing that UNT teaches its players over the years. It's the timing on power position, and they love to attack it. So Dan's definitely going to be opportunistic on those power positions, especially when Taylor of the Hustle is so concerned with the ref and arguing with our ref, Aaron Phillips today, that he doesn't even guard Matt Bennett, who takes the disc and easily boosts it down the field.
And that's something that we have seen when players are used to college ultimate, where you do discuss the calls. it's not advantageous to discuss the calls as the play is happening because it's really only the ref's call that matters, and you could lose out on some defensive positioning there. So now Dallas pulls out of bounds. On the brick mark is where the disc will come in. Robert Runner taking it there. Patrick Eberly, player coach, will be on the mark. Force is an away force. I would say backhand, but it appears Runner's a lefty, so it's not exactly backhand. And a putt goes up to Little. 2 Roughnecks right on the disc. Looks like, I guess I would give Reed Bacon the D there.
I'd say so too. Definitely the presence, if not getting contact on the disc. When Bacon's got the grease pop and stand back from the stovetop, baby.
I take it back. It looks like maybe Chris Larberg was the one that hit the disc. Either way, great effort, and Bacon has the disc now. Passes to Ted Barnett. Ted Barnett swings over to Zach Riggins. Riggins launches a laser. Ted makes a very ambitious bid, but a little too much velocity on that.
Riggins not usually known for his
I
hucks.
was surprised he threw it.
I am too. I don't blame him though.
Choi in power position. Launches a big backhand to Little. Bacon trying to catch up. Not enough room. And a score for Atlanta.
Once again, capitalizing on transition where it is available. And Little's going to need some water after that one.
2 minutes, 6 seconds left in the quarter.
And Choi was just in perfect power position to get that backhand. But Little, you can see how tired he was right after he caught it. Rightly so. Well-earned water rest there, Sam Little. Now Dallas O-line back on the field. Stapleton with the disc to pull. About 2 minutes left in the third quarter. Soaring pull. Looks like it will go out of bounds.
Just will be taken at the break.
Our resident hecklers give their standard not a puller chant. Wouldn't be ultimate disc without heckling.
Never quite understood that.
Dylan Larberg launches one to Thomas Slack. Thomas Slack tracks it down into those said hecklers. Stays on his feet. And Dallas gets to 20. 1:56 left to go in the third quarter. Atlanta 13.
From the moment Slack got called up from the practice squad, he has taken full-fledged opportunity, full advantage of his opportunity, rather. You got to believe that everyone loves to have his speed at a constant on the field.
He's so fast.
Always there.
And I must say that took some dexterity also, kind of navigating through all of those fans that are sitting right outside the end zone on their blankets.
Had someone to do a bit of a hill sprint, too, if he needed to.
Right. Exactly. So Matt Bennett with the disc to pull. Another Blady backhand. Atlanta lets it hit the ground. Now Tennell. To Leonard. Leonard to Taylor. Looks for Sam Little deep, but instead elects to dish it back to Leonard. Leonard with that big backhand to Smith. Dan Emmons and Ben Laurie flanking Smith. Not quite. That was a Smith sandwich, if you will.
Still nearly caught it amongst those big trees and those Roughneck defenders.
Now Matt Bennett with the disc in Dallas's own end zone. Sends to Steven Darrow. Darrow to Laurie. Laurie double teamed, leaves Bennett unguarded. Swings it off the sideline back to Laurie, all the way across to Jake Anderson. Anderson finds Dalton Smith, back to Laurie. Give and go. Strike cut to Dalton Smith. Another strike out to Ben Laurie. In that power position, but all same third receivers. Dalton Smith with the big swing around to Dan Emmons. Emmons plucks it out of the air, finds Jake Anderson upfield. Anderson with the flick to Smith, Larberg. Larberg to Darrow. It's a break mark score for Dallas. Dallas 21, Atlanta 13. 23.4 seconds left in the game. Early recognition is critical as the official nonprofit for the AUDL and uses Ultimate to teach kids about body awareness and early cancer detection. We do this through clinics at middle schools all over the world. You can make a donation or sign up to volunteer at a clinic in your area by visiting the website earlyrecognitioniscritical.org. In fact, Eric is also the partner at the World Games in London right now, and they're the official Spirit of the Game partner. Very exciting things happening with Eric. So 23.4 seconds left. Atlanta's getting the disc. Greg, what do you think they're going to do here? Set play, quick score, or try and milk the clock so they have the last possession?
They'll definitely go for that first look, but if it's not there, they'll hopefully quickly make a few quick throws in order to try to sneak a power position at the last second. As you see, they didn't go for an isolation play. They're just marching it up.
So now Sears, kind of in that every other, now gives it to Leonard. Back to Erickson. Back of the end zone. And Jake Anderson catches it. The buzzer sounds. We're at the end of the third quarter. Dallas 21, Atlanta 13. We have one quarter left to play here in the Colony, and you're watching DallasRoughnecks.com.
Early recognition is critical. Teaches middle school PE classes about ultimate frisbee and cancer symptom awareness.
We're a registered nonprofit that advocates for an active, healthy lifestyle, body awareness, and speaking up if something is wrong.
Skills that, when it comes to cancer, can help save a life. Ultimate is a fast-paced team sport that's self-refereed, non-contact, and co-ed.
Spirit of the game is the foundation of Ultimate. That means we communicate respectfully, we're fair-minded, and we enjoy the game.
Ultimate is accessible to everyone. All you need is a frisbee and some friends. Our team of coaches is made up of experienced and passionate leaders from the Ultimate community.
We teach kids that playing fair is more important than winning.
We can come to your middle school and run your PE classes for the day. And if we're not in your area yet, we'll send you our clinic in a box, where we give you the resources to run your own.
Ultimate Frisbee is one of the fastest growing sports in the world.
Teachers and parents love Ultimate Frisbee.
We are Eric!
And we want to work with you and your school.
We have one quarter left to go here in the Colony 5-Star Sports Complex as the Dallas Roughnecks are up over the Atlanta Hustle 21-13. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald here with Greg Gibson and Paige Schnorbach down on the field. Greg, one quarter left to go. Atlanta has had a long weekend. What does Dallas do then to kind of prepare for what's next?
Well, essentially at this point, fourth quarter is winning time, and in winning time, you win it with your legs. You win it with your gumption and digging in and overcoming the conditions, especially on a hot day like this. Roughnecks already making a statement. They're standing on the line awaiting the 7 of Atlanta to hustle out there to the field for this fourth quarter. We'll see what Atlanta has to bring and if they can really dig in for the last quarter of their weekend. They're trying to hold on to that third place spot in the South Division. We'll see what happens.
And you bring up a good point there. Their name is The Hustle, so you would think inherently legs or hustling, as they say, would kind of be an important part of what they do.
Heat might be their contractual excuse for not hustling.
That's true. That is true. Austin Seoul, on the other hand, I'm sure they make sense then. They're in a very hot area. And the Roughnecks strike oil. That's what they do. So Dallas now pulling to the Atlanta hustle. Based on the flip at the beginning of the game is how the possession alternates between quarters, which is why Dallas started on offense for the third quarter and the first quarter, and Atlanta starts on offense for the second and fourth. Smith with the disc, back to Tennell. Tennell finds Taylor in the center of the field. Taylor dishes it over to Gaynor. Gaynor to Tennell.
Atlanta's doing a lot of dancing to get open right now, but not gaining a lot of yards at the moment.
Tennell finds Spinks. Spinks dishes it back to Tennell. Tennell with that backhand to Leonard. Leonard looks and finds Vickroy. Vickroy finds Tennell again. Vickroy up the line with the reception. Looks like a strip call. Chris Larberg is just already walking forward 10 yards.
Yeah, he knew.
Knows there was a foul there. I'm sure he would have invoked the integrity rule had that not been called. And Vickroy sends that easily to Gaynor. For the first score of the fourth quarter is Atlanta.
Vickroy getting the hustle off on the right foot. Once he got involved in the play, once he touched this for the first time, he was involved the rest of the way out, every other. But for him to perhaps will his Atlanta hustle into getting within striking distance as we tick down in winning time.
And the hustle had a lot of passes on the far side of the field, but still didn't let that get to them, maintain their patience, and then were able to find those opportunities. Certainly that strip foul call on Chris Larberg kind of helped them gain free yardage.
From here on out, we'll see if they can maintain that poise, pace, and space.
So Brandon Malachek over to Matt Bennett. Hustle back in their junk zone again. Bennett finds Jackson. Jackson back to Malachek. Malachek to Costello. Costello over to Peterson. Peterson now on the sideline. Swings it back over to Malachek. Malachek with the hammer to Thomas Slack, who was unguarded. Slack to dishes to Jackson. Jackson to Peterson. Peterson to Jackson. Jackson to Malachek. Peterson still open. Now guarded. Back to Malachek. Malachek to Jackson. It's a break score for Dallas. Dallas 22.
Sorry, Amy.
It's all right. Atlanta 14.
Matt Knowles of the hustle didn't seem quite cut out or quite energetic enough to run that break side wing. And because of it, the breaks were there all day. They were just eating up all the territory on this break side of the field. And as you see, he was helpless in stopping a score on his side of the field. Perhaps needed maybe a different body in that position.
And you wonder, too, when the hustle are choosing to crumble out of their zone into the man-to-man, because sometimes that transition leaves defenders out of position, and so can get those break mark throws off.
That transition to man hasn't exactly always been the most efficient or done with the most sense of urgency.
Now Dylan Larberg with the disc to pull. Another roller, just like his last pull. Now on the far sideline. Double team there on the sideline. Tennell with the disc, gets it off to Spinks. Spinks finds Vickroy unguarded in the backfield. Spinks to Taylor, Taylor back to Spinks. Launches a big backhand, the ref getting out of the way. Tennell right outside the end zone. Steven Darrow covering him. And Sam Gaynor with the goal for Atlanta.
From here, it looks like ref Aaron Phillips was taking his real sweet, precious time getting out of the way of that disc.
Yeah, it seemed like Steven Darrow had a difficult path to get to the disc when that huck went up. But this is something that Dallas has had several last back scenarios where maybe they cheated a little bit too much underneath and took too long to catch up to that person in the deep space. So the Dallas O-line on the field. Pole goes up. Falls right in front of Matt Costello. He dishes to Malachek. Malachek to Peterson. Peterson dumps back to Malachek. Malachek, the big fake. Really interesting OI flick to Peterson. Peterson with that IO to Chris Larberg for the score.
Great decision by Malachek to holster the initial deeper look, and then with the awkward put to get it to Peterson, who finishes it off with the IO flick with space for days to Larberg.
And that was a great job using that IO flick. It wasn't a laser that Chris had to track down, but you said he just put it right there in his space. Very difficult to do.
Usually they're floating too high and too far to that back corner, or they're bulleting right, turfing to the ground. Put it just right for him with poise and in rhythm.
So now the Dallas D-line running down the pole by Ted Barnett. Tennell with the disc. Ryan Spinks. Spinks to Taylor. Taylor the backhand. Over to Vickroy. And Vickroy was in. He wasn't sure if he was first or not, but a really quick point for Atlanta.
Number 20, Taylor, has sure been involved in much of the action for the hustle today. Grabs it and throws a laser backhand in rhythm to stalwart Vickroy for the score.
And so now the Dallas O-line has to come back after a very short rest. That was such a short point. An answer to the hustle, who are not giving up. They are playing 4 full quarters, determined not to be in the type of deficit that they had in the first quarter.
And certainly scoring at a quicker pace for the time being.
Dallas still up by 7. 9:18 left in the game. Brandon Malachek picks up the pole. Lends to Matt Costello. Floating into space, Dylan Larberg. Larberg dishes to Slack, back to Larberg. Dijon, as they say. Back to Thomas Slack. Bren Laurie in the middle of the field. Finds Costello. Costello really without that continue cut. Now Larberg with the continue. Too highly contested, so D credit to Anders Olsen. Now Laviolette with the disc. Sends to Haskell. Haskell deep. And J.P. Burns puts the burners on to track it down. And the Dallas offense is broken. Atlanta gets a break with 8:29 left in the game.
Haskell seemed to have no interest in making it easy on himself. Opted instead of the OI flick for the nice IO backhand, but he puts it right on the money to his receiver. And maybe, just maybe, the hustle can mount something here.
And the Drunken Donkey is a bar with 150 craft beers on tap. You can watch the game from any angle. They have a scratch kitchen with a lot of great appetizers and burgers and food. You can catch them in several locations around the Metroplex and are a great partner for the Roughnecks. Visit the Drunken Donkey Craft Bar and Scratch Kitchen.
Look at that logo. Who wouldn't want a beer from that donkey right there? I want a brew from that donkey.
And Dallas O-line back on the field for a second consecutive point after Atlanta got the break. Malachek with the disc to Jackson. Jackson to Costello.
Would certainly love to look at a box score and see just how many points and how many touches Malachek has had. Not necessarily fun with the box score, but has certainly been the anchor for the squad.
Roughnecks find a bit of a hole, sends it to Slack. Peterson streaking deep. Dalton Smith sends it to Peterson. Peterson to Laurie, and Laurie hops into the end zone, but had a foot down first. And Dalton Smith scores for the Roughnecks. Dallas 24, Atlanta 17. Just under 8 minutes left in the game.
There we saw a bit of a defensive breakdown for the Hustle, but what's worse was no hustle to recover from that defensive breakdown, and they pay for it. Dalton hauls it in with the easy, dinky 1 yard touch flick throw.
It seems like once Dallas was able to find Thomas Slack here on our near sideline, it was just kind of clockwork from there, working it up this fourth side.
Well, there's been one big throw or mini successive. Once we expose a leak, once Dallas has exposed the leak, they just keep rolling, essentially.
So now Ted Barnett with the pull. Elliot Erickson, actually Leonard, sorry, that's Max Leonard with the disc.
Interesting matchup here out in the space. We got Animal on Taylor.
Trenton Spinks, Nathan Vickroy with on double teamed, gets it out to Smith. Smith finds Gaynor. Gaynor overshoots Taylor.
How many of those have we seen today?
And Danimal is in perfect position. Ted Barnett with the big huck fake instead dumps it off to Dan Emmons.
Made the sideline believe that huck was going off.
Matt Bennett with the dive slide catch. Jake Anderson gets some space on the open side. Big OI to Dan. Dan in the corner to Dylan Larberg. And score Dallas.
It's got to feel good for Dan to finally put an assist in after a few errant throws earlier in the day.
And that is almost bookends for Dan. He caught the D, but then had the assist for the goal there. But pretty strong game for Dan Emmons, also for Dylan Larberg.
Absolutely.
Lots of big defensive efforts.
We said the competitive drive in the defense would be the key with our with Dallas Stars over in London. We were wondering if Atlanta would capitalize on that, but as we've known Dallas to have, that firepower has not gone away, even though the names might be a little different on the line.
So just over 7 minutes left in the game. Dallas is up 25-17. Ted Barnett has the pull. Just on the goal line there. Now Robert Runner with the disc around the brick mark. Backhands to Laviolette. And a tip in the
drill.
air. Still grabs it. Anders Olsen. And the Atlanta Hustle not giving up with the tipped throw in the air. Anders Olsen pretty fired up with his reception.
I think after Barnett failed to D the disc after the tip, and Olsen was able to reel it in, he was a little upset on how Barnett tried to recover on the D. Almost looked like he wrapped his arm around his hip, but that wasn't enough to stop him from finishing off the score for the Hustle. But he was not happy about that defensive recovery. I believe he was unhappy about how Barnett played him after that tip drill was completed.
And Paige is standing by on the sidelines. Paige, what you got for us?
Emmy and Greg, I know y'all can feel it like I can down here. The sun is blazing right now. It's 3:07, which is high heat time, and these players are feeling it. It would be fine to assume that the heat might be affecting them, dehydration might be setting in, but when I asked Ted Barnett about this, he just laughed and said, no, this is our home field, we're used to it. Back to y'all.
Thanks, Paige. And certainly Ted hails from Florida. A lot of these players hail from Texas and other warm weather states, used to playing out in this heat. Thomas Slack with the dish. Dish to Peterson. Peterson to Laurie. Laurie, little blip there to Peterson. Peterson to Malachek. Malachek to Bennett. Bennett to Jackson. Jackson with the backhand to Slack for the goal. Dallas 26, Atlanta 18, 6:09 left in the fourth quarter.
Atlanta 18, 6:09 left to go.
Thomas Slack timing his cut perfectly on that break side so that Matt Jackson could send that backhand to him.
Hustle had that foresight well patrolled. But all day they've let many break throws off, and when the break throws have gone off, it's been bad news for the Hustle.
So Matt Bennett with the disc again to pull. All the players for Dallas getting a lot of reps today, since already kind of short on numbers, and then Kai Marshall out with the injury to his hamstring.
Given that the Roughnecks are such an ensemble cast, you think that ensemble cast is going to be so very battle-tested given all the interchangeable parts they've used throughout this whole regular season.
Taylor with the bobbling catch, but manages to hang on to it. Dishes it over to Leonard. Leonard swings it back over to Taylor. Taylor across to Tennell. Tennell continues over to Gaynor. Gaynor launches a big flick. Matt Bennett is there in the backfield, but Smith is squirrely enough to come down with it. Continues over to Erickson. Actually, Leonard, I can't tell. The 5 and the 6 on their jerseys are just hard to read. But it's a 7-point game, 5:41 left.
We're going to need a copy of Gaynor's ab and core workout because his flick hucks are just effortless. And
it was into the wind, too. Granted, the wind's only blowing about 9 miles an hour, so you would think someone at this level should be fine with it. But at the same time, it was so clean. So now we have Robert Runner with the pull. High and around to Costello. Costello to Malachek.
A little drama to catching that pull.
Malachek to Laurie. Laurie to Costello.
Once again, saving those legs, sagging in the lanes.
Costello to Larberg. Larberg to Malachek. Malachek to Peterson. Peterson to Christian Larberg. And he caught it. Sends to Matt Jackson for the score.
And that's frustrating if the Atlanta defense. Your task is to shut down that fourth side, and Dallas is having none of that.
Drunken Cow Jerky uses 100% Texas certified beef with no artificial meats, fillers, or preservatives. They make the jerky with fresh ingredients such as onion, garlic, and several types of peppers, depending on your spicy preferences. Drunken Cow Jerky gets their name from a unique process where they soak the meat in whiskey for 24 hours along with other spices. So next time somebody asks you, where's the beef? Be sure to tell them it's with Drunken Cow Jerky.
Is soaking things in whiskey like the next kale of the cooking world or something? I feel like everything is soaked in whiskey these days. I'm just not caught up on it. I don't see the appeal.
I don't hate it.
I was offered a whiskey cake after practice yesterday, and that's the last thing I want after a practice.
I just love cake. Let's just say that. So, Tennell over to Erickson. Erickson swings it to Leonard. Now Vic Roy finds Tennell. Tennell, big backhand.
In rhythm.
Eberly in the air. And Sam Gaynor able to make that catch. So now it's a 7-point lead for Dallas.
I'm not the most familiar with Gaynor, but I think you can tell just by this run alone how tired and how hot it is out here. That's definitely a tired run right there, finishing off the deep hook.
But excellent stamina, being able to really track that down into the back of the end zone. Tennell playing a lot of points, putting in a lot of work today. So not a lot of rest for the Dallas O-line in this fourth quarter.
Still maintaining that 7 to 8 point margin, however, throughout this second half, especially the fourth. Atlanta sideline yelling at their defense to cover that pull. Easier said than done with this heat, though. A few of them still dragging to get down there.
Still working in that zone. Malachek,
Baby!
big hammer to Peterson. Peterson staying patient, finds Laurie. Laurie on the far sideline, over to Bennett. Swings it over to Malachek. Layout D by Taylor Goforth. Launches a big huck. JP Burns trying to reach it.
Just not enough float on that at all.
It's a pretty low flick in general. Now the Roughnecks need to work it down the entire field.
Knowles is giving it every last inch of his will and energy. Hitting the ground pretty often on this defensive stance. Once again on this right wing defensively.
Matt Bennett there with the swing. Dishes it to Matt Jackson. Back to Bennett. Over to Malachek. Malachek kind of recognizing that poach over to Laurie. Sends it over the top to Peterson. Peterson all by himself right outside the end zone. Costello drawing a defender. Injury called on the field. Sam Little walking off on his own. Robert Runner stepping in his place.
I'm not sure he actually wanted to come out. He was shaking his head as he walked off. I don't think he actually wanted to come off.
It's actually giving the Roughnecks the opportunity to set up their offense outside the end zone. Bennett with that dish and go. Jackson to Casey Hogg. And a Dallas score, 28. Atlanta 20. 2:51 left in the game. It's a great quick disc movement, dish and continue between Bennett and Jackson, and then to Casey Hogg.
2:51 remaining in the fourth, and the Atlanta defense is still being put through the grinder. Especially Knowles, who's digging very deeply to try to corral in these Roughneck handlers in the back. Doing all that he can, he and his hustle teammates.
And Stanley Peterson also finding that space to where Brandon Malachek, who has a very large encyclopedia of throws, can get that hammer to him.
Boom the hammer straight down the middle of the field. You don't see that often.
Dalton Smith really chasing down the pole, finds as Tennell dishes it over to Spinks. Spinks by himself on the near sideline.
Spinks could have gave the backhand hook a look, but they just...
And with plenty of time, still throws a laser to Taylor, forcing a turnover. And now it's Dallas disc. Matt Bennett walking up to the disc. Lots of fake movement there. Gets it to Dalton Smith. Finds Dan Emmons in the end zone, and it's a quick score for Dallas.
Dan Emmons in the end zone for the Roughnecks break.
Dallas 29, Atlanta 20. 2:14 left in the game.
Now that margin's creeping up to 9.
And Dan Emmons doing great break continue, like you would see once Dalton Smith caught that disc. And Matt Bennett, even with that double team, really taking advantage of the fakes and moving his mark.
To be honest, I'm a little disappointed in how he threw out of that double team. I was honestly expecting that disc to go through someone's legs.
I saw that coming as well.
He wanted it. He was looking for it probably.
He at least faked it there. But the thing is you have to take that fake seriously with somebody like Matt Bennett. Brayden Malachek with the pull on defense. Don't know if we see 0-0 on defense too often. Ted Barnett racing down the field. Tennell now has the disc. Gets it to Taylor. Taylor over to Smith. Smith high in the air. Vickroy still grabs it over to Tennell. Tennell to Choi. Choi toes it in. Still in bounds on the sideline. Looking to break off the sideline. Oh, Reed Bacon bids for it. Turns out the disc misses both he and Vickroy. Dallas pick it up right at midfield. Kevin Christian with the disc, launches big lefty backhand, looking for Chris Larberg. Don't know if it'll stay in. One toe is in with the score.
Boomer Sooner connection.
That was 2 OU teammates. Kevin Christian with that big lefty backhand. Chris Larberg, you see him look down, look up at the disc, look down, look up at the disc, and toe it in all the way. Ref calls score. And Dallas has hit the 30-point mark.
Christian's a quintessential handler. He's a equivalent of a point guard really in basketball. If he has a cutter back there with all that space, Green Acres is the place to be. He's going to put it with that touch, and he's going to get it in. Larborg just toes it in.
That sideline view was just the perfect angle to see just how well he towed that in. There was not much room left before that line. And the pull is wide and high. Ball's out of bounds on the far sideline. Atlanta will take it at the brick mark. Choice, or Laviolette starting with that deep initiation, but some miscommunication, so it's a turnover.
Not to mention the very poor initiation throw.
Right. And Matt Bennett's high release flick, cross field high release flick to Dylan Larberg is enough for the score. 31 Dallas.
At this point, the game is put away, and we're just in Dallas is clearly just looking to put on the show now.
And for newer players out there, the high release cross field flick isn't typically one that coaches will recommend. Typically a little bit higher risk throw.
Try it on your own. Don't bring it to tournament day, that's for sure.
Exactly. But for somebody like Matt Bennett, he perfected it at games that didn't matter. So he has earned the right to throw him. Although, if it was a higher stakes situation,
I'm willing to bet he was more than willing to work the kinks out of those throws.
Right.
in first semester tournaments for sure.
Leonard catches the pull, dishes it over to Tennell. Tennell, big backhand looking for Vickroy. Christian Larberg right there and tips it away.
The Hustle have been very respectful for the most part of the defense in the deep of the Roughnecks, I kind of question that put of all of them. There are definitely some ones that they've looked off that they've had a better shot at.
And the high release flick to Casey Hogg, too high. Leonard back with the disc, 38 seconds to play. Hustle looking in the end zone, find Matt Smith.
I'm not going to quite give him credit for the bookends because that was the most gratuitous, unnecessary layout D I've ever seen in Ultimate, but that's okay.
And our player of the game today is the brand new father himself, Brandon Malachek. Brandon has had a fantastic game as a handler and catching the disc, and that's all with probably not a lot of sleep with a new little one at home, but he has had a heck of a game. Congrats to Muffin. You are the Dallas Roughnecks player of the game.
Happy Father's Day, and hopefully you're not on diaper duty once you get home tonight.
He probably will be if Mom has been on diaper duty the whole time.
If I'm Malachek, I'm heading straight for the bedroom and hoping to fall asleep before I can even be forced to do a thing.
And 31 seconds left in the game as the pole goes up. Matt Bennett catches it, swings it over to Malachek. Malachek launches a flick huck.
Why
looking
not?
For Matt Jackson. The very tall Taylor Goforth is there. Hustle call a timeout with 18.3 seconds left in the game. And this is an end of the game play right here. You see that Matt Jackson's definitely covered, but really does his best to still catch that disc. So we are just a couple weeks away from the last home game of the season. Hope you join us on Saturday, July 9th at 7 p.m. Central as the Raleigh Flyers come to the Colony to face the Dallas Roughnecks. The last home game for the Roughnecks for the regular season. They've already clinched the first seed in the South Division playoffs. Currently, Raleigh is sitting at number 2, so it'll be a great game and really solidify. It's always more fun to watch it live. So tune in to the live stream July 9th, 7 p.m. Central on DallasRoughnecks.com.
If you enjoy the grit and tenacity that is the Dallas Roughnecks, that's a matchup you will not want to miss because Raleigh Flyers are certainly a counterpart that Roughnecks could essentially say, well, I'm looking in the mirror and I see someone that's just like me in terms of that aggression overall.
So the Hustle starting in an isolation play there. However, have a 10-yard penalty and now starting in the center of their end zone. Crowd chanting Callahan. Kevin Christian there on the mark.
That'd be something, a buzzer beater Callahan.
Definitely not outside of something that the Roughnecks are capable of. Smith with that first reception there to Gaynor. Gaynor to Vickroy. Vickroy back to Smith. Smith fakes deep, back to Vickroy. Vickroy to Smith. Smith sends it up to Dalton Smith. And that is the game. Dallas 31, Atlanta 21. We will be back with some post-game coverage and interviews right after this short break. Don't go away on DallasRoughnecks.com.
What does the most experienced advertising agency look like? Miller Senior Staff brings an average of 18 years of experience to each meeting. 18 years. We know what works and what doesn't. Media and digital plans based on proven past performance. Creatives that sell first and never worried about awards or accolades. An account service that can lead your business based on 18 plus years of success. Our team is ready to join your team.
And what an exciting finish for the Dallas Roughnecks today. 31-21 over the Atlanta Hustle here at home. And we have Paige Schnorbach down on the sidelines with our player of the game, Brandon Malachek, that we'll talk about in just a second. How crucial was Malachek today, kind of keeping that offensive flow going?
Well, he really held down the fort. Like we mentioned, he didn't necessarily rack up the stats in terms of points and assists, but you'll notice he was there for all the touches, receiving all the pulls, making the key decisions, and just anchoring an offense. And sometimes that's all it takes to be a player of the day.
So in the third quarter, Dallas and Atlanta were really trading points back and forth. What do you think was that key to kind of help Dallas get out of that trade situation?
Well, speed kills. And for the Roughnecks, their speed and their tenacity was a constant, whereas for Atlanta, it was not. You especially saw that once break throws got off and Atlanta just couldn't quite recover to shut down and stop the bleeding. So speed kills.
Right. Well, I believe Paige is ready down on the sideline with Brandon Malachek. Paige, what you got for us?
I'm here with Roughnecks player of the game, Brandon Malachek. We spoke to him earlier. Brandon, you went into the second half, killed it. You had 46 of 51 completions. Tell me what was going on out there.
It was a free-flowing game, and really tried to move the disc. They played a lot of poachy defense, so we really had to move it around and space the field.
Y'all started off to a big lead at the beginning. They seemed to kind of make a comeback. What did y'all have to do to ensure the win?
In the third quarter, we just really said we wanted to play really hard, intense defense, and I think we did that down the stretch.
And how do you plan to spend the rest of your Father's Day?
I'm going to go home and comfort my wife and play with the baby.
All right, that sounds good. Congratulations on everything and great game.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And back to you, Greg and Emmy.
Thanks, Paige, and congratulations, Brandon. So the Roughnecks are on the road facing the Austin Soul July 2nd, and then they will be here back at home where we will have our next telecast July 9th. So, Greg, they face Raleigh in their last home game. How do you think that will really prepare them for that postseason play?
It's the perfect opponent going into the postseason because it's the best opponent they can get out of the South Division, seeing they're right at 2. When the Roughnecks look in the mirror, they can sometimes see themselves, but they also see players such as Jared Bowman, who are on Raleigh, who are just as tenacious and just as hungry and just as much in your pocket when it comes to the defense, and just as prolific offensively at times too. So it's the perfect test before going into the postseason. It should be a real slobber knocker.
And then the next team they face is the Austin Soul. So currently in the standings, it is Dallas, it's Raleigh, it's Atlanta, and then Austin Soul. And so really, even facing the Soul is a great preparation. They've really surged in the back half of this regular season.
Like we predicted, they're starting to bring things together as they've had some experience as a team. And they're not out of the playoff race yet. The Hustle are just above them, but they're definitely looking to make a statement and maybe in their inaugural year in the league, make their way into the playoffs.
Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in today on this Father's Day. I want to give a special shout-out to my dad, who is just such an awesome inspiration. We hope you enjoyed the telecast. And for everyone at Game On Sports Productions, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald, Greg Gibson, Paige Schnorbach. We hope you catch us July 9th here in Dallas. Follow us on social media and all of the action on DallasRoughnecks.com.